Hi, this is Ben, and you're listening to the Christian and the Campus podcast. Today, of all days, I'm here with my mother. I've been excited about this conversation that we're going to have. We've been talking on the phone about it. We talked about it over email, and now we're finally getting to have it in person. And I know that you're going to be blessed by getting to listen to my mom about this. But she's not just my mom. She has been the activities coordinator, both officially and unofficially, for over 30 years now at the Auburn Christian Student Center. She has sent me and my sisters off to college. She is just a person you are going to reap a lot of wisdom from, and so I'm excited about that. So I'm just going to let her introduce herself with this simple question, Mom. How has your faith been shaped on a college campus, and/or for this particular conversation, how has your faith been shaped by sending your kids off to college campuses?
Well, I do have a long history with campus ministries, over 40 years worth. Um, Honestly, it started as for me as a high school student because my home congregation in North Carolina had a campus ministry. So I had the privilege of watching college students, even as a teenager, and watching their passion for Christ and for campus ministry and for reaching the lost. And that was exciting. And then as a student, a college student, I was greatly influenced in Auburn by Paul Cates. And then your father and I, as you know, went to Rutgers and planted a campus ministry. And I learned a lot there. That was our wilderness experience, but it was also an experience of incredible growth spiritually in many ways for our marriage and all sorts of things. And then I've been back now for 37 years in Auburn, trying to point college students to Jesus. And like you said, in some form or fashion as a volunteer or a part-time and full-time. And college students are still teaching me. And then as a parent, I would say I've probably learned more from you three than I've maybe taught you. And I don't know if it's ironic or not, but all three of you have ended up in higher education and either directly or indirectly, you in campus ministry, and Amy works for the College of Architecture, Design, and Construction at Auburn, and Anna is finishing up her PhD at Brown. So I have continued to learn from the three of you. So I'm not an expert, but I have been exposed to a lot over 40 years when it comes to campus ministry.
Yeah. And a few other things that we have yet to mention. Mom is also a board member for the Campus for Christ Conference, which is a gathering of Church of Christ campus ministries in the summer. She's a board member for that. She's also, I think the main thing you can kind of pick up on this already if you're listening into this conversation. We're going to be talking about basically, I'm sending my kid off to college. Now what? How do you handle that experience? And so Mom has done that 3 times with me and my 2 older sisters, Amy and Nana. But she's also walked part of just kind of what she's done at Auburn, and I've got to watch her do over the years. And it really is amazing as I watch her engage with parents as they bring their kid to college. One of the things that Mary Beth always talks about is how her mom understandably had a lot of anxiousness sending her kid off to Auburn, sending Mary Beth off. And the moment she met you, Mom, you put her right at ease. And so Mom has tons of experience with dealing not just with college students, but with the parents of college students as they're thinking about sending their kids off to school. And she has sent 3 of us off to school. And so there's no one, I think, with more wisdom on this subject than you, Mom. And so I'm really excited to get to ask you some questions. So in light of all that, in light of all your experience of sending kids off yourself and watching people send their kids off, what tend to be parents' greatest fears in sending their children off to college, and especially a secular state university?
Well, it's reasonable to have fears, especially sending your child off. Honestly, there's reason for that. The statistics aren't good. Barna, Fuller, and the National Council for Youth, all of these places, have lots of statistics. Just a couple of them. that creates some of this fear, and that is that 3 out of every 5 young Christians disconnect either permanently or for an extended period of time from church life after age 15. 3 out of 5, that's about 59%, they say. 40% of youth group seniors significantly struggle with their faith and with finding a church home after graduation. Only 16% of college freshmen felt well prepared by their youth ministries for what they encounter after graduation. So, there's reason to have concerns, but there are also great ways to face some of these things head on. And I think that's what we want to talk about today. My biggest thing is that no matter where a student is, if they are living in the basement, in your basement and going to a community college, if they are going to a state school, or if they are going to a Christian college, it does not matter. This is probably, out of anything I'm sharing, I'm more confident of this than anything. And that is that students will find what they are looking for on campus. So as parents, we need to make sure our students are looking for the right thing. That's the key. And typically, it's not the intellectual struggles. It's been, over these past 40 years, it is very rare that I hear or encounter a student who is overwhelmed by what they heard in the classroom, but rather it's the moral decisions that are being made in the privacy of their own home, lifestyle decisions. Those are the things that are eroding away their faith and their connection with God and his people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what I guess, and what are some maybe other fears, or are those all the ones that you've seen? Or
no, I think another I think something else that happens with another fear, I guess you would say, or concern, is that lack of community increases all of these things. And so I think that's something that parents need to really be aware of. And so because being on a college campus, you've got to have community. That's what you and I are here for. I mean, that's what we're all about, is creating community so that college students have other people of like mind to walk alongside and face those, all of the fears, all of the concerns that you have of going to a campus, no matter where it is. I think the thing is, though, that what we need to remember is, as we're looking at, fears, is that Jesus sent his disciples to the lost and hurting. So, no matter, like I said, no matter where you send your child, in your backyard or across the country, they're going to be the same issues to deal with. And, but as we look at Jesus's example, he sent his disciples to the lost and hurting, and our college campuses are full of lost and hurting students. The key is, and what's so important to remember, is those lost and hurting students are probably more open to receiving the good news of Jesus because they are in that transitional time of life. They are open to new ideas. They are open to maybe hearing things and accepting things now that they're out on their own. And our students can live on mission while getting an education, while growing emotionally, while growing relationally, but they can live on mission for God on their campus.
Yeah. And I think like one of the things that is big is that it is easy to then, there are very understandable, like you've kind of laid out, very understandable concerns and fears. But it is very easy then to act out of that fear and let it take over. And so I guess in that context, I guess, what are some common mistakes parents make as they send their kid off to school? And one of the things me and you have talked about, and just kind of the lead up to this conversation, is the idea of helicopter parenting. And so I'll let you explain that, but also I guess explain maybe too, why is that so prevalent?
Okay. I just wanted to finish up one last thing from that last question, and that is that, and it leads right into the next question, and that is that, yes, there's a risk of sending your child off anywhere to college, but Jesus understood that as Christians, we are rarely effective and growing if we're playing it safe. So safe Christians are rarely effective and growing Christians. So I do think that that leads us right into the next thing. So what can we do to face the fears? I'd like to, well, you mentioned helicopter parenting, didn't you? That's something I think we need to address. And I'd like to start addressing it by talking about a story that I read not too long ago about a dean of students at a university. And he said that one of the issues that his office dealt with a lot was concerning meal plans, student meal plans. And apparently at this university, there was a lot of confusion over student meal plans. So years ago, he noted that he would get a lot of calls from students about their meal plan, wanting clarification. And then he said it started transitioning and changing to where he was getting calls from parents about their students' meal plan. And then he said, now I get calls from parents about our meal plan. So it changed from the student calling about their meal plan and has transitioned all the way to the parents calling about our meal plan. So that kind of gives you a perspective that is not just campus ministries, but it's university-wide, that we're having to deal with parents, helicopter parents, and I want to talk about a little bit about the unhealthy things that being a helicopter parent causes. I tend to like the term curling parents better, curling like Canada curling, because curling parents, I think, really kind of describes it better, because we're wanting to sweep away every little problem for our child and create that smooth lane for them, so that they haven't faced any issues, any problems. They haven't had to problem solve. And I think that is a real issue right now with college students and parents. I think the reason that this is important to talk about this is because delayed adolescence and a failure to launch, which is a real issue in our society, might be more of a result of parents than of students, because of this kind of parenting style of the curling parent, the helicopter parents. Because helicopter children are more likely to grow up, this is a statistic, I've seen some statistics on this, more likely to grow up to be irresponsible, anxious adults with an unhealthy sense of entitlement. And I think that, we're seeing that across the board in higher education. And there is a big difference between healthy involvement and being a curling or a helicopter parent. Involved parents are engaged in a way that promotes autonomy and competence. And like I said, the helicopter or curling parent promotes a failure to launch or to, just
any sense of responsibility. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One way that I see this, you probably see it too, is an involved parent, a caring parent, I would say a Christ-like parent, will help arrange, like one of their priorities is to get their child connected with a congregation, with a campus ministry. Again, I don't care where they're going to school, Christian schools included. And get your child connected on the front end long before they arrive on campus. And that usually involves a visit, set up a visit, with a campus minister, with a church family, go to some of their activities beforehand. Most campus ministries have things that they invite prospective students to join in on. Find out about those, take advantage of those.
Mhm.
The key, that's an involved, caring, Christ-like parent.
Mhm.
A helicopter or curling parent is the parent who takes their kid on, to take advantage of those things, but then they do all the talking when they get there. The child can't even get a word in edgewise. Or when the campus minister addresses them, they answer the question. There's the difference.
Mhm.
But do be an involved parent.
Yeah.
Just don't be a helicopter parent.
Yeah, it's almost like there's like three kind of levels. Like you have the apathetic parent, which is not Christ-like, and then you have on the
Right.
other end of the spectrum, you have the helicopter or curling parent that is just so involved that their kid can't even get a word. And
Right.
that kind of third way, which is often the Christian way and the Christ-like way of but it's also in some ways, right? Like you're talking about discipleship, right? The ability
Right.
to guide and shepherd your child along the path, but then your child's also responsible to follow that path, and you can't do it for them
Exactly
as
right.
much as you want to, as much as you desire to. You just can't, because no matter where, and I've heard you say this, and you've already said this podcast, and I've heard you say it over the years. No matter where you send your kid, they're going to find what they're looking for,
That's right.
and all you can do is kind of provide the pathway, and they're going to choose whether they want to go down there or not. And so yeah, I think that's there's a lot of wisdom in that, and a lot of things. They're very natural things, right? I mean, I think helicoptering parent is a very natural response, but
Sure.
there's tendencies that have to be, and the Christian life is full of this, things that are seemingly natural responses, but as the Christian life is calling us to maybe prune some of those tendencies down, and reorient us, not to not be involved, but to be involved in healthy ways. Are there any other, and there may not be, I'm not sure, but are there any other things that you kind of want to hit on in terms of common mistakes parents might make as they're sending their kid off to college, or
Well,
mine with helicopter / curling parenting?
I think here's a picture I'd like to end with on this question of trying to be a healthy parent. And it's the picture of being at an amusement park and waiting to get on a roller coaster. And if you've had teenagers or young adults, you know that it's like this. It's a roller coaster. And our job as parents is to stand on the platform as they step into the roller coaster, because they are going to step in. Is let them step into the roller coaster, let them ride. And we're supposed to stay on that platform praying. And as they circle back around, we're supposed to wave and say, I love you, and tell them to hang on tight. And we're supposed to keep praying as they make the next loop. But we're not supposed to get into the car with them. And I think that's just a really important visual as you're going through teenager and young adult years, is to remember to stay on the praying platform, but not to get into the roller coaster car. And that's my best advice.
Yeah, that's I think that's a really, and also in some way, yeah, like you have to be steady for your kid, and as they go on a roller coaster, and I think,
And easier said than done. Believe me, I am not perfect at it. Because remember, and I meant to say this right at the outset, there are no perfect children. I don't care how good your child is. There are no perfect children, and there are no perfect parents. So it works both ways. No perfect children, no perfect parents. But you can,
as your child, I take offense to that, but but
get over
but moving forward, in light of all, in light of that kind of picture you're painting for us of you're staying on the praying platform as the parent, and as your kid goes on the roller coaster of life. In light of that, what is the best way to encourage your college student or your kid who's about to head off to college? Yeah.
Okay. Well, in thinking about this, I tend to think of it in terms of before they leave for college and after they've left for college.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd kind of like to address real quickly 4 things before they leave, and then kind of the counterpart to them for after they've left.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So the first thing to remember before they leave is that parents are still, despite all these things big, bad, ugly things we've talked about, parents are still the greatest influence in a teen's life, in a young adult's life.
Mm-hmm.
And they are still the single most important influence on the religious and spiritual lives of their teen and or adolescents and teens and college students. So that's important to remember. You've got influence over your child's spiritual direction.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing I'd like to point out is that one of the best ways to maybe have that influence is by radical acts of faith. I think they're very critical. You know, it makes an impression on your child of any age when you make a radical decision or an act of faith that is really going to maybe cost you something. Maybe it's turning down a more lucrative job to stay with a church that you've committed yourself to that's hurting or struggling. Maybe it's, you know, taking time off and going and spending a chunk of your time doing medical missions or something. I don't know what it is for you. It could be anything. It could be something on a local level of what you decide to do. But one thing is to make the radical acts of faith, but two, to interpret them for your child. Otherwise, your child's going to just think hey, I've got nice parents. They're willing to do things for other people. We need to express why we are doing these things in the name of Jesus. And then another thing before they leave from home is I think it's important to let them express their doubts. And I think we're scared to let our kids do that. I mean, that's, I think, probably one of the biggest things or one of the things we're most afraid of is for our child to express doubts. But I read an interesting quote. It said, "The key is not to get kids to say the right things before they graduate into the big bad world, but to help them think through the tough questions and verbalize some of their faith and personal struggles before they hit the ups and downs of the college transition." Mm. And that's from Dr. Kara Powell from the Fuller Youth Institute. Mm. So I think starting that before a child leaves, you know, and helping them think through things is really important. Mm-hmm. The fourth thing that I was going to share that I think is important for an important way for parents to encourage their child before they leave home is to encourage your child to go someplace for an extended amount of time. Mm. I know for you three, you went to Honduras for a summer to work with Mission Outreach the summer after you graduated from high school. Your sisters, Anna, went off to study at Oxford in England when she was in high school, and Amy was a page for 6 months in DC. And all these times were really important for y'all because you were forced to grow up. You were forced to start doing some of those college things before you had all the other transitions of college. So you were forced to be responsible for getting up and getting going, for doing your own laundry, for getting your own meals, all of those things. And so that I think that it made the transition easier when you did go to college because you'd done that before. And there's so many transitions when you go to college. It's just like we send our kids to preschool to get them ready for kindergarten, and we send them to kindergarten to get them ready for first grade. It's just important to continue to for our kids to make preparations so that they're ready. And since there's so many spiritual challenges when you go off to college, take care of all the ones you can take care of before you go, like the laundry and the getting up on time and all that kind of stuff. Make sure all those are taken care of so you can major in the majors when you get to college.
Yeah. And then, so like you're talking, you kind of had those four things in terms of preparing your kids. So I guess what are those kind of, you're sharing kind of like the counterparts to after, so when someone, they send their kid off to college that, they've prepped hard, they've done what they can to prepare their kid.
Right.
They're sending their kid off to college. what is the best way for them to continue encouraging their student once they show up on the campus?
Okay, so we're going to go over 4 things once your child has left to go to college. Um, you're still one of the most influential people in their lives, and you know your child better than anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a fine line. So you really do. You know your children better than anyone, and you've got to know when there is a real, when there's truly an issue. And when you do think that there is an issue, whether it's spiritual, academic, or emotional, you need to encourage your child to get help, professional help. Whether if it's spiritual, make sure that they're well connected with a campus minister or an elder or some mentor or somebody who can help them spiritually. If it's academic, there are so many things said at every university. They want your child to succeed, I can assure you. We sometimes question that, but it is the truth. They want your child to succeed, if for no other reason than they want your money the next year. So so they want your child to succeed. It looks better for them, and it's better for your child. And they have everything set up for your child to succeed. And so encourage your child to get academic help. Go to the professor's office, go to the extra study session. There are things, I don't know what your child's unique situation will be, but I can guarantee you there are ways and things set up to help them, encourage them to get help. And emotionally, maybe they need some professional counseling. Maybe they just need to talk to somebody who is older and wiser. But don't let your child get in a pit, because it's really hard to dig out of a pit. So early on, encourage them to seek help. You know your child better than anyone. The second thing is encourage their radical acts of faith. I encourage you to take radical acts of faith. Encourage their radical acts of faith. If they come to you wanting to go on a mission trip, if they come to you wanting to change their major, maybe because they think it will help be a way for them to serve and be on mission for God better. Might not make as much money, but they think that they can serve others better. Whatever they come to you with, their radical act of faith, do your best to encourage that, not discourage that. I think that's really important. The third thing would be to let them wrestle with their doubts once they leave. Now, if they're in community, you're a lot more at ease with them wrestling with their doubts. So that's why community is so important. Wrestle within God's, family and framework. But let them wrestle. They'll be better off for it. They need to own their own faith.
Yep.
And then the last thing, once they leave for college, that I would encourage is for you to really work hard at taking the long-term view. So in other words, if they get homesick, those first few weeks and months, don't say, that I'm so glad you're homesick, because I think it's time for you to come home, and your dog's missing you, and mom and dad are missing you, and Aunt Susie's missing you, and so we're gonna have a big party this weekend, so you just come on home. It would be better if you could encourage them to stick it out. You encourage a long-term view. I have had more parents call and say, my child is really homesick, and I just don't know what to do, and should I let them, they want to quit and come home. Well, my advice always is encourage them to stick out a semester, and really and truly is to stick out 2 semesters. It's amazing how many college students go home on Christmas break. They realize that it's not the same what they've left behind. Everything has changed. They're missing something that's not there. Their friends, how things used to be in high school, so on and so forth. And so then after Christmas break, they come back to their university, and they realize, I actually have friends here and I really missed it. And this place is great.
Mm.
I love where I am. I just thought I was missing something that doesn't even exist anymore. I actually am happy where I am. I've seen that literally thousands of times. And so try to take the long-term view with your student and encourage that.
Yeah, I love number 1 and 4 that you had there, because your first point was like, you still know your kid better than anybody else, even after you send them off to college, and you do want to stay involved, and you do want to check up on them, and you do want to be an encouraging presence in their life. But all the suggestions you had were things that would help them stay, not things that would pull them out. And that only happens that when you have number 4, which is that long-term view. And that's how you guard against the helicopter parenting move,
right?
Or the curling parenting move. Is that long-term view that you have to take, and it's easy to get caught up in the thing that's right in front of you. But there's power in the transformation that can happen in your child. That happened to me, and that's still happening in me when the parent takes the long-term view. And I think there's a lot of wisdom and kind of being able to hold that tension where you are, and kind of their whole point of this is you are involved, but you're involved in a particular way. You're encouraging from afar, pushing them along this trajectory of life that they're headed on towards Christ. And I think you really captured that really well. Do you have anything else on this, or are we good to maybe move forward in the conversation? If you have anything else, add it.
I don't think, I mean, the only other just like thing I just feel like I have to share, I guess, would be, and this is just kind of a random observation I have made over the years, and it has held true for basically 40 years. And that is to be very careful as a parent, not to want to live your life through your college student. So maybe you have some regrets of how you did or didn't do things as you in your young adult years. And maybe you want to live vicariously through your college student, and that's not healthy. I have seen countless parents, usually moms, who's really wanted their child to be in a certain Greek organization, let's say, or any kind of organization. I'm just going to pick that for an example. And maybe they didn't make it into that particular Greek organization. And so in the mom's view, and as a result in the child's view, before they've even attended the first class on campus, so they haven't even done what they've come to do, is to get an education, their college career is doomed. It's ruined because they didn't make it into whatever it was, whether an athletic team or an organization on campus, whatever. Yeah. And I've seen kids leave before classes even started. They didn't make it into marching band. They didn't make that Auburn University marching band, whatever it is. And I just think it's really, and I think that's another reason why campus ministry is so critical, because so many organizations are a closed door policy. We're an open door policy. We love all college students. And as a result, that we're here to catch your kids when they fall, when maybe they have one of those letdowns. And so that's just my final bit of advice along those lines.
Yeah, and the two things, and your kid's probably going to grow if they do fail at something and then have to show some resilience. And then the second thing, I always like to include a shameless plug for the Rebels for Christ campus ministry inside of this. So here it is. We are an open door policy. Please come join us and send your kid towards us if you're a parent listening to this. And yeah, so that's my shameless plug for this podcast. I'll try to fit one into each one, and that is it. But we are probably
so nicely.
What?
Glad I set you up so nicely.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So we this is not planned. We are mother and son, but this was not planned. That was just a serendipitous moment. So we are probably running lower on time. So to close, I guess, are there any just kind of, any best or final piece or pieces of advice for parents as they send their kid off to college that you have that you want to share with them? And then I'm going to ask you to say a prayer over the Rebels for Christ Campus Ministry to close. So,
Okay.
the first piece of advice.
Well, I would say that it's just bottom line, it's important for us to remember that God has a vision for the lives of our children. And that as our children grow up, it's God's desire that they have a personal relationship with Him. And it's our God-given responsibility as parents to point them in that direction. Now, they've got to grow their own faith. They've got to make their own choices. And the main thing is that we don't stand in the way of that. And I think back to the story of Jesus as a young man in Luke 2. Mm-hmm. And when his family is in Jerusalem, and then the parents leave, and then they realize he's missing, and they go back to find him in the temple, and he's sitting at the feet of the rabbis, and he's learning, and he's talking, and his parents are astonished when they see him, and they say, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." And he says, "Why were you searching for me? Don't you know that I had to be in my father's house?" But they didn't understand what he was saying to them. And I think that as parents, sometimes our children aren't lost, but we are. I think kind of like in this story that we can stand in the way of our children if we're not careful, and stand in the way of their growth. And college students today have a heart for the marginalized. They have a heart for the hurting. They detest hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. They really, I think, are searching for truth and trying to live it out. They don't tend to love money and things, gathering things like, previous generations. They have their shortcomings, but I'm telling you, they have real true north compasses. Mm-hmm. And we can learn a lot from them. And I think that by giving our college students back to God, not only will they grow, but we will grow too. So those are my final comments.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on to the Christian and the Campus podcast. I think you were quite obliged to, since you are my mother. You couldn't really turn me down. But to close, if you don't mind, just offering up a prayer for the Rebels for Christ Campus Ministry as we head into the 2020-2021 academic year.
Absolutely. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time that Ben and I've had together today to talk about how we can give our children back to you. And as parents get ready to do that this fall under very, very unusual circumstances, I pray that you will give parents peace and parents wisdom. I pray that you will give students wisdom to make good decisions as they come into some very uncertain times and very uncertain circumstances. But through it all, I pray that you will use us to point college students to Jesus. I pray that these college students will grow in your image. And I pray that because so many of our usual trappings will be done away with because of the pandemic, we won't be able to get caught up in them, that we can maybe see you more clearly. And I pray, that is my prayer, is that we see you more clearly. And I pray that you will use the Rebels for Christ campus ministry to help college students see you more clearly. And it's because of Jesus and through Jesus that I pray this prayer. Amen.